You know, when people talk about Vikings, they usually talk about ships, or raids, or warriors screaming into battle. But there's this one story that always comes up, and every time I hear it, I don't think about brutality first. I think about grief. It's called the Blood Eagle. And yeah, it sounds unbelievable. The story says a man would be tied down, his ribs cut away from his spine, his lungs pulled out so they look like wings. Even saying it feels surreal, and historians still debate it. Some think it was real. Some think it was misunderstood poetry. Some think it was propaganda written later to make the Vikings look monstrous. And honestly, we might never know. But here's what I keep coming back to. Why would a story like that exist at all? Because even if it wasn't common, even if it was exaggerated, it had to mean something. And the pattern in the old sagas is interesting. The Blood Eagle doesn't show up randomly. It shows up after betrayal, after a father is killed, after a king is executed, after a deep, personal wrong. It's revenge, not casual violence, not battlefield chaos. Revenge that needs witnesses. And that tells you something about the world they lived in. There were no police, no courts that would protect your family. No system that guaranteed justice. Your reputation was your protection. If someone killed your father and you did nothing, people wouldn't just think you were merciful. They'd think you were weak, and weakness was dangerous. It meant your land might be taken. Your allies might drift away. Your enemies might test you next. So imagine that pressure. Imagine losing someone you love and knowing that your response will define how safe your children are tomorrow. That changes things, because now revenge isn't just emotion, it's strategy. And rituals like the Blood Eagle, if they happened, they weren't just about pain. They were about sending a message so powerful that no one would dare repeat the offense. That's what makes it unsettling. It's not chaos. It's calculated. And here's the part that's hard to sit with. The men who supposedly carried this out weren't born thinking they were vilains. They were raised on stories about honor, about loyalty, about protecting family at all costs. They loved their children. They laughed in their homes. They worried about winter. They were human. And that's what makes this uncomfortable, because it means extreme violence doesn't require monsters. It requires context. In Norse poetry, eagles and ravens were symbols of the battlefield. They circled above war. They fed on the dead. So the idea of turning someone into an eagle was symbolic. It was like saying, you belong to the battlefield now, not as a hero, but as a warning. And rituals like that, they're theater. They're meant to be remembered, which might explain why the story survived centuries. Even if the exact details were exaggerated, the emotion behind it was real. Grief, pride, fear, the need to be seen as strong. And I think that's why this story lingers. Because it forces us to confront something we don't like to admit. Every society believes it is civilized. Every society thinks its violence is justified. We tell ourselves it's different when we do it. Necessary, defensive, righteous. But if you step back far enough, history is full of moments where people convince themselves that cruelty was required to preserve order. The Vikings aren't unique in that. They're just honest about it in their stories. And maybe that's why the Blood Eagle feels so haunting. It strips away the illusion that humans are separated neatly into good and evil. Instead, it shows how quickly grief and fear can turn into something ritualized, something sacred, something performed. And here's the question that stays with me. If you lived in that world, no modern laws, no outside protection, just your name and your family. If someone killed your father publicly, and everyone was watching your response, would you choose mercy, or would you choose something unforgettable? Because it's easy to judge from a distance. It's easy to call them savage, but history gets complicated when you put yourself inside it. The Blood Eagle might have been rare. It might have been symbolic. It might even have been misunderstood poetry turned literal by later writers. But whether it happened exactly as described or not, it reveals something real, not about Vikings, about us. About how humans react when survival, pride, and grief collide. About how fear can dress itself up as justice. And maybe the most disturbing part isn't the image of wings carved from bone. Maybe it's realizing that under the right pressure, most societies are capable of creating their own version of it, and will always call it necessary.